there isn't a sound moral theology to transitioning genders.
Yeah.
But there is a sound there is a sound theology, a sound pastoral theology to many things in life, and this issue is one of them.
Right.
I do feel like the pastoral approach of, I don't know about many, but at least some Christians, not that great.
Yeah.
It's not great. It's not a great way of spreading the good news. One should ponder very carefully how they put the message out there. That isn't a compromised message, but it's a message that's as digestible as possible. Part of the reason why I lapsed as a teenager, as a Catholic, is in my infinite wisdom, I approached a religious sister. I hadn't transitioned yet. I talked about, me being trans. This is in the early 2000s, mind you. And she didn't have the most pastoral response. She just did this whole, it's morally wrong and you shouldn't do it. And
right.
I think she suggested to pray hard, or I just remember it just wasn't exactly a pleasant experience.
You can't pray the trans away, just like you can't pray the gay away. I think that's the problem with Christianity and Christians in general. The focus needs to be on your relationship with Christ. From that foundation, then the possibility stands that Christ will work through you, and your desire or your carnal lusts, or whatever, however you want to word it, can then evaporate. Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of the Don't Be Deceived podcast, where we like to hear stories of real people. And today's story is another testimony, this time from well-known trans Catholic, I think, Dana Pham. But before I introduce Dana Pham, hello, Lauren.
Hey, Claudia, how you going?
I'm really good. I'm so glad that you're back to co-host with me. Episode 3. We're doing an all right job, eh?
Another week, another episode.
Another week, another episode. Let's bring on
this one.
Yeah, this one will be interesting, I think, because right? Yeah. So ask whatever you like. Dana's a really open person. Doesn't take offense to anything. Yeah. I much enjoy Dana. Hello, Dana. How are you?
Hello. How's it going?
Good. You look wonderful.
I try to be. One should always endeavour to be wonderful, fabulous, all those pretty words.
Oh, yes. Well, you've always been wonderful toward me. So, do unto others. So, for those who don't know much about you, and even for me, who I don't know much, so just so you know, this podcast is more about faith and testimonies rather than politics. But that doesn't mean we can't delve a little bit into that or touch on it. Are you Vietnamese? Is that correct?
Background, yes.
Mm-hmm. Background. And so does that mean that initially you were raised in an environment that had no God? Were you raised in a communistic past? Like, could you enlighten us?
Sure. So Vietnam has a very long Catholic history.
Okay.
Catholicism was introduced to Vietnam, can't remember, it was 16th or 17th century, sometime around then, through Portuguese missionaries. And so today, I think about 7 or 8% of Vietnam today is still Catholic. At one point, this is during the Vietnam War, there was a regime in South Vietnam that was so pro-Catholic to the point that they were persecuting Buddhists, etc., etc. It was quite dictatorial. So Vietnam actually has a very interesting Catholic history. And of course, at one point, it was a French colony, a part of French Indochina. So the Catholic influence continued through that pathway. A long and very complex Catholic history Vietnam has, and you wouldn't have known for a country that only about 7-8% of the population identifies as Catholic.
Wow. Interesting. Go ahead, Lauren.
What other faiths may you find in Vietnam?
So the main one I think is Buddhism.
Okay.
And you've got various Eastern belief systems. Don't quote me on this. I think there's Taoism. There is, I can't remember the names, but there are a variety of Eastern religious and philosophical belief systems in Vietnam. It's a similar situation in China, or in some other ways, China's different to Vietnam in terms of belief systems makeup.
Yeah.
It's Vietnam's another East Asian country that has a diverse range of belief systems, including atheism. So being a officially communist country, if you're a religious group in Vietnam and you're perceived to be too much of a troublemaker, the Vietnamese government won't be too fond of you. But if you're a bit more established, like say the Catholic Church in Vietnam, the government will have a little bit more trust in you, not too much trust, because, communism and religion, they don't go hand in hand. It's more, we don't want to annoy the 7-8% of the population, for example, of Catholics, so much that we start to lose support on the ground, and then that might lead to government instability, which is not what they want.
When did your family arrive in Australia? How long were you there before you saw, the Western world?
So I was born in Australia, but my parents, they came to Australia in the mid-80s. They both met at a Malaysian refugee camp, Pulau Bedong. It's an island off the coast of mainland Malaysia. You could compare it to Christmas Island, the Christmas Island of the 80s or of the 90s in Malaysia. And that's where my parents met, and they both came to Australia. They had other options. Australia was one of the options, and I think they did have some sort of say, but eventually they were more or less offered Australia, so they went with it, and here I am in Australia, being interviewed by you.
Our pleasure. Okay, and so if you were already Catholic, do you have a testimony regarding maybe leaving the church and then coming back, or were you just always Catholic? Like, how would you characterize your faith?
So I was baptized Catholic when I was a baby, pretty much. I went through the various sacraments at school. I went to a Catholic primary and high school. So there was my first reconciliation, my first Holy Communion, confirmation. All those were in primary school. I lapsed as a teenager. A lot of Catholic kids, it's part of life. It's part of being a teenager. You lapse. Sure. And then life goes in all sorts of different directions. For me, a couple of years ago, I started getting curious about the Christian faith in general again. I started off with, let's call it Protestant church shopping. It was
that's Anna.
life circumstances.
Yeah.
Um,
Are we able
we
to know
sometimes
that, or is that something you want to keep more confidential?
probably a bit more confidential, but
Sure.
everyone has their ups and downs. I hit rock
Mhm.
bottom. There are a lot of rock bottom stories out there, and my story is
Absolutely.
just it's just one of those other rock bottom stories.
Oh,
This is going back 4 years ago,
Sometimes we all have
four-ish.
that place, Dana.
Hmm.
Mm.
So when I did my church shopping, it was mainly um, Pentecostal / charismatic, independent kind of churches that I floated around, and I was never satisfied. And going into the first year of the pandemic, 2020, I did church shopping as much as I could, even from home, and even after the first national lockdowns and churches were slowly opening up again, I was still unsatisfied, and it wasn't until I was some Sundays I would church shop, some other Sundays I wouldn't. It was somewhat non-committal. Um, it wasn't every single Sunday was a routine. None of that. Towards the end of 2020, I had this realization that maybe I want to dig deeper and not just look at the Christian faith in general, but look at my roots, my Catholic roots. It was what I was raised with, and I figured if I'm going to go back to square one, I do it the way that's I do it the way that's reflective of my upbringing,
okay.
or it's trying to figure out if there's something deeper to my upbringing than the moment in my teenage years where I had my shallow hissy fit, whatever it was, and decided to lapse.
Can
It's almost like trying to make amends with the past, but trying to figure out what does that look like.
No, I understand what you're saying. I just wanted to go back to something. It's no secret. You've responded to several of my posts on Facebook that I'm relatively critical of the Catholic Church. Surprise, surprise. So when I ask you about your faith and you say, I went through this, and this, with the utmost respect, Dana, you didn't make those decisions. Your parents did, because you're a baby. So you can't really make those steps to come to Christ, because you're a baby being put into a ritual that may or may not mean anything biblically. So yeah, how do you respond to that?
Sacred scripture is important, but from a Catholic perspective, so is sacred tradition. And if it wasn't for sacred tradition, there'd be no sacred scriptures. And sacred scriptures by itself, well, where does it come from? Sorry, what I was meant to say was sacred tradition by itself. Well, it needs to be, not that it has to be, but it'd be a good idea to write it down. If we look at the Old Testament, the Torah, Jewish
The Pharisees.
Jewish scriptures. So when we say scriptures, it's something it's written down. But
sure,
the oral traditions. That's the term I was looking for. The Torah started off as an oral tradition in itself.
Yes, that's true.
The Bible started off as an oral tradition, but not just an oral tradition, a sacred tradition.
But what has that got to do with baptism as a baby, and you not having the option? Or what are you driving at?
So baptism is part of the sacred tradition. I couldn't pick a year off the top of my head right now as to, when was the first baptized baby in the Catholic
Oh,
tradition.
likewise. Absolutely. Yeah.
It was exactly 2,000 years ago. I don't quote me on that because I can't remember the exact date. But sacred tradition continues to develop. It's been developing for the last 2,000 years. And at some point, in the early church, we, as the Catholic Church, or should I say for myself, as a Catholic tradition, because technically I'm Anglo-Catholic, but as a tradition, it was started at some point in the early church, and we've been carrying it on ever since. Is it specified somewhere in the Bible? Noting there are various versions of the Bible, I understand, I won't get into that debate, which is why sacred tradition is important. I think in one of our exchanges online, I think I must have admitted that no, it doesn't. There's nothing specifically in the Bible that says.
You showed a verse. You showed me a verse that said household, and that in the term household, that's what you did. I remember. Yeah. That could mean a baby as well.
That's right. I remember now. So
now, do you remember? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember now. So whilst the Bible doesn't say, by all means, baptize your baby children, or words to the effect, because you won't find in the Bible, but it's a holistic interpretation of the Bible. We call it Catholic tradition. Others may just call it, it's just one way of interpreting the Bible. It's not the right way, or there's different ways, or so there's a debate there. But the Catholic perspective is it is biblically derived. It's just not explicit.
All right, Lauren, do you have anything to add?
Words. Sorry.
No, I was asking whether Lauren had anything to add.
Not at this stage. I'm still listening. Yeah, curious to hear more.
Look, I'll give you a more recent example of Catholic tradition. So, I don't know if you can see, but this is the miraculous medal. And if you have a look, and that's the back of it. And if you have a look on the bottom, I'm in the dark. Well,
no, that's okay.
Yeah, it's got the date written on the bottom. I think it's 18. I can't read it. It's too dark.
It's all good. It's all good.
My eyes aren't great. Aren't good enough. But I think, again, don't quote me. I think it was sometime in the 1800s. I think, as part of a Catholic tradition, some of us started to wear the miraculous medal that has Mary on it. So, sacred tradition, it's ongoing. It continues to develop. Every time Rome canonizes a new saint, that's a continuation of sacred tradition. It's living, it's ongoing, it's been ongoing for 2,000 years, and hopefully it will continue.
Yeah.
How does these traditions help you connect with God?
Yeah, good question.
Right. So a lot of these traditions are very bodily. What I mean by bodily is Catholic artwork, Catholic
physical
Catholic art in the form of bodily, physical, very physical. Well, I know the word bodily.
I got you.
Statues of, say, Jesus, Mary, various saints. So that's very bodily. And if you walk into, again, on the miraculous medal, it's a very bodily artwork of Mary. You walk into a church, it's a very Catholic church, I should say. It is a very bodily experience. Sure, you walk into other churches, you look at the cross, Jesus isn't on the cross, but you walk into a Catholic church, there's a a physical depiction, sculpture, wooden artwork, whatever you want to call it, of Jesus. You'll find statues. You'll find a lot of Catholic churches, the older ones especially, big, grand, tall, majestic, whatever big words you want to throw out there.
But how does
And
that
why is
connect? You're not really answering her question though, about how your Catholic faith connects you to God. It doesn't sound.
So are we body and soul? We're body and soul.
Yeah.
So if we're
Yes.
both body and soul, by having these bodily interactions, we're a body. Okay, I get that. But having interbodily interactions, there's a mysticism to that. It's a mystical experience, if that makes sense. It's a way of bodily, emotionally connecting with the faith, with God, with Christ.
What was that, Lauren?
What do you mean exactly by a mystical experience? Like it's some. Are you saying that when you interact with these certain items, they allow you to go into a space within your body that is more transcendent? Is that what you mean? Like a transcendent beyond the physical and into the spiritual?
So what I mean is, in our worldly world, right here now, it's the earth. It's just a world. It's just earth. But when you walk into a church, for example, in a way, it's heaven on earth. The ceilings are so high. It's like it's almost trying to reach the heavens.
So you're talking about the majesty of the interiors and the opulence of the church, right?
So
that's what it does for you.
But how do you?
I don't dare say other Catholics.
Hey.
And I dare say other Catholics.
Okay.
So
how
statue
do you
of Mary.
reconcile this position with the scripture that says that he did not come to dwell in bricks and temples made of bricks and mortar, but within
Jesus was humble.
our body, which is the temple of God?
Whether it's the physical church, whether it's statues, it's a way. It's like an addition to what you've just described. Is an addition. If it wasn't an addition, then you can accuse me of idolatry. If
I would say every Catholic does that, but it's a circular argument, so I'm not going to get into that. You've seen my statuses. Yeah.
If there was a statue of Jesus, of Mary, and I couldn't be mindful that actually it's just a statue. This physicality helps with the religious experience. If I took it as, actually the statue is the thing, like, the golden calf is the thing. If I took the golden calf approach, yes, that'd definitely be idolatry. But statues, my miraculous medal, the physicality of your majestic churches, if I treated it as if it's for golden calf, then I'd be in the wrong. But that's not the Catholic approach anyway. So
no, that isn't the Catholic approach. I guess that's true.
I have not so much a question, but just, it might lead into a question, just something to add on there. Are you familiar with John Ramirez's testimony, Dana?
He's in New Yorker.
Okay, right. I don't think I've come across that name, but
interesting. you might be
Go.
interested to listen to it.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
He mentions in his testimony, because he was an ex-Satanist, but he also was familiar with that Catholic upbringing, and the people that he was surrounded by in his network were Catholics. And he was talking a little bit about an interesting subject on statues that people would bring into their homes and take home with them. They'd go into a store, buy them, take it home. And they would give all these statues names and birthdays. And these statues were of the saints and what have you. And he explained this concept that we as human beings cannot connect to immortality because we are in the material world. So from his point of view, as someone who was an ex-Satanist and was working directly with the devil, as he explains, he would say things like, well, other spirits, unclean spirits, would operate and attach themselves to the statues. And so people, through giving these statues names and birthdays and whatever, have this point of relationship to this statue, and they don't realize that they are actually interacting with not the Holy Spirit, but an unclean spirit, which was an interesting perspective, something that I hadn't thought about before. But it does make me wonder if we are creating statues of saints and of holy figures, and we start giving them names and birthdays and special days that we honor and celebrate them, that we do esteem them to a higher place of worship, which should be replaced with Jesus, the only middleman. But that's just, it's an interesting, just an interesting side note, but something to think about. And I'd love to share that with you if you're open to listening to that testimony.
So my response to that, it's a snippet, but I'll respond to it anyway. My response to that is, so I'll think about the saints I look up to. Let's pick a saint I look up to. Saint Thomas Aquinas. I think in St. Patrick's Cathedral, so the Catholic Cathedral in the Melbourne CBD, there's a part of the cathedral that has several statues of a number of saints, and one of them is St. Thomas Aquinas. So I've been in St. Patrick's once, and so I sort of remember the statue of Thomas Aquinas. So first of all, why do I look up to him as a saint? Well, he is the father of Catholic philosophy, basically. I'm doing my postgrad in philosophy, doing my postgrad in theology at the University of Notre Dame in Sydney.
Wow.
And I've done some philosophy subjects. That's what I was meant to say. Which means I've studied quite a bit on Thomas Aquinas' work. And being the father of Catholic philosophy, it's been for me to say it's been an inspiring experience is a bit of an understatement. It's been a bit more, it's left me, well, a lot of times his work has left me in a state of wonder. So then, one could get worried and be like, Dana, hopefully you're not worshipping St. Thomas Aquinas. Now, we do have a joke in Catholic circles that a joke with regards to the Dominicans, so your Dominican priests, brothers, etc. The joke is they need to be reminded once in a while, because Thomas Aquinas was a Dominican. They need to be reminded once in a while that Thomas was not God, so be careful, you Dominican. So it's just a joke that's thrown around. But there is something to the joke, and there is, and that goes back to the point you made earlier, Lauren. if one is not careful, then yeah, it's possible for one to be worshipping the saints and not realize it's possible. In a world of where 15% of the world is Catholic, so however millions of people that is, you'll find a lot of bad apples. So one section of the population, especially if it's 15% of the world population, you'll find many bad apples. Not necessarily people with evil intentions, but good intentions, but just not doing the right thing. Do I worship Thomas? No. Do I admire his work, his Summa Theologiae? Most certainly. Did I don't remember praying in front of his statue, but I didn't look at his statue as if, he's, that's a real deal. Even though he died in medieval times, he's a real deal, and I'm going to look at him, with the eyes for idolatry, because I realize it's just a statue to humanize the here and now of what I've learned about his work.
Right.
I know that sounds convoluted, but it's a way to remind myself he is a saint, but he's not God. He's just a canonized saint, and you, me, we have the potential to be uncanonized saints and be part of the communion of saints.
The Bible says we already are. Those of us who have accepted the sacrifice that Jesus made on the cross for our sins, we are already saints. The whole the canonization is just a ritual that you and I won't agree on. That shouldn't, that doesn't, it's not required.
It's a way of formalizing
the good works of
who Catholics could look up to.
Sure. I understand. I come from the Catholic background. So just, I'm feeling the need to state the obvious, obviously. So forgive me, but I know you expected it anyway. Would you say that you love God, and would you say that you have faith in Jesus Christ?
I have faith in Jesus Christ, and I love God. If we want to be very specific, whether I love God, you're not the first person to get at this. Do I love God intellectually and or emotionally?
I mean emotionally, but sure, answer both. That's good.
I love God intellectually. I'm not very good at loving God emotionally. If that makes sense.
Okay. The reason
and it's sort of a Catholic thing, but this is not a reflection of other Catholics, but it's kind of Catholic disposition.
What were you going to say, Lauren? I felt like you were about to say something.
Oh no, I just said it's easier to love Jesus than it is to kind of love God, because
fair.
Right? The God of the Old Testament versus the New Testament.
Yeah.
A difference in the character, or just a different side of his character.
Yeah. The reason, Dana, that I chose to bring that up was because last time I had you on my channel, you probably remember the torrents of hatred I got for having you on.
Fun times.
Well, because, Christian girls don't interview trans people. Somehow that's the wrong thing to do. I don't know where they get their biblical references from, because I am called to love everyone. And
I had a private revelation, and that revelation told them so.
Sorry?
Your
revelation?
I'm being facetious. I joked that they had a private revelation that told them so.
Yeah, they're morons. But that's fine. I'm obviously leading to the elephant. They would want me to ask you, and I know that you're okay with me asking you, if you did love God and you did respect your faith, wouldn't you have accepted yourself as you were rather than as you are?
So life's complicated.
Absolutely.
I'm not a... People who I've known, and there's many people with a history of gender dysphoria, it's a choice, but it's not a choice. It's a very
I understand where that
complicated
comes from. Yeah, because you were made in his image. Isn't that a wonderful thought? And you changed the image, but you were made in his image, because I think that's incredible. We all can claim that.
Well, thankfully, I'm not transracial. So thankfully, I have not changed my skin color. It's
That's random.
thankfully, I'm not transracial.
Okay.
I'm not trans age. I'm not trans a lot of things. I'm just trans one thing. But jokes aside.
Yeah. Jokes aside.
Jokes aside. You know, generally speaking, people who transition genders, look, there'll be those who, you know, they didn't really need to do it, in the sense of, you know, they weren't having mental health issues around gender, for example. You know, there are some, not many, but some trans people who they're trans because they transitioned, not because they have this inner sense of, you know, I need to transition, otherwise my life is going to be terrible. I'll just continue to be miserable, and, you know, I need to do something. Yes, there are, rightly or wrongly, some trans people who, did they need to transition genders? It's debatable. But for a lot of trans people, it's you'd want the thought to go away. You'd want the interior experience to be different. You'd want that part of the interior experience to just go away. But it doesn't go away. It eats at you. And if you're feeling torn in your daily living, that's not a way to live. Now, that is not to say that there is a moral theology. Did you just drop out, or you still there?
Claudia dropped out, but yeah, continue.
Oh, it's still recording.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. There isn't really a sound moral theology to transitioning genders. I will admit that, and it's become, during my studies, it became obvious. So, why is that? You know, you start with the obvious. Genesis talks about male and female, in God's image, male and female, he created them. But then you'd be like, well, why was that mentioned in, I think it's Genesis 1. Why was it mentioned in Genesis 1? Why wasn't it mentioned much later on? Well, maybe it's because it's very important. It's an important mention. Why is it an important mention? Well, the next commandment, well, I think the very first commandment that you can find in the Bible is be fruitful, and multiply. Adam and Eve, their original man, original woman, in order for man and woman to continue beyond Adam and Eve, there needs to be fruitfulness and multiplication. And it starts with Adam and Eve and our first parents, and it continues on from there, and that's how you were born, and that's how I was born. Which is to suggest that that there is a telos, so teleology, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. There's a telos, there's a design to a male body, a female body, and to be crude, what is the purpose of a penis? Well, the purpose of a penis is along the lines of been fruitful and multiplying.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be born and I wouldn't be born. So, okay, from a design point of view, that comes from the Bible. Now, I've been on female hormone replacement therapy for a very long time, over a decade, and I've had sex reassignment surgery, which, it contradicts that design.
Yeah.
So, and especially in Catholic moral theology, you don't do, in crude terms, you don't do a bad thing to achieve a good thing, generally speaking. If you're going to do something that's possibly bad, it should be more of a neutral thing than a bad thing.
Yeah.
So changing a design to then serve, so that it loses its purpose and serves some other purpose that it wasn't originally designed for. Yeah, that doesn't really cut it in Catholic moral theology. So I acknowledge it.
So define a bad thing. A bad thing would be changing God's original design. Is that what you're saying?
For example, yes.
Okay.
So to clarify, and we'll go back to Thomas Aquinas, when he wrote on natural law. This is based on Aristotle as well. We should always be moving towards the good.
Yeah.
So Aquinas named a number of goods that you and I should be moving towards. So one of the goods is the good of marriage. Marriage is good. We should be moving towards marriage.
Yeah.
So what does marriage, what does that involve? Well, you more or less become one flesh with one person. And once that happens, well, there's the union there. To not go down that path, if one was to remain single, it may not be that person's fault that they're single. They just haven't found the right person. So that's more, they haven't deliberately chosen to be single. They haven't found the right person.
That's
They're not moving towards bad. They're just not necessarily moving towards the good, just because of circumstances.
Yeah.
So moving towards a bad would be going in the complete opposite direction.
Right.
And
how does all of this, what you're explaining now, how does this sit with the choices that you've made?
Well, as I said, life is complicated and we should be pastoral towards each other.
Absolutely.
There's no, there isn't, like I said earlier, there isn't a sound moral theology to transitioning genders.
Yeah.
But there is a sound moral, there is a sound theology, a sound pastoral theology to many things in life, and this issue is one of them.
Right.
I do feel like the pastoral approach of, I don't know about many, but at least some Christians, not that great.
Yeah.
It's not great. It's not a great way of spreading the good news. One should ponder very carefully how they put the message out there. That isn't a compromised message, but it's a message that's as digestible as possible. I have an acquaintance, for example, they, and I say they because they identify as non-binary, they are an active member of the Uniting Church.
Okay.
They also know that I'm not exactly a fan of the Uniting Church and that kind of theology. And they're quite aware that my theology is more conservative.
Right.
But the reason I bring them up is, well, it's better that they're Christian than being atheists because, I don't know, someone approached them in a very unpastoral manner and they thought, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be a Christian.
Yeah.
And yet they are Christian. So
it's and everyone goes through this, Dana, like Paul talks about this, like the thorn in the flesh, like doing what you don't want to do, but you do it anyway. This is kind of our nature is, there's God's righteousness and the journey to follow that. And then there's also the fact that we're living in this natural body, and we sometimes do the opposite of, what's contrary to God's righteousness. And this is that journey that we're on. We're carrying our cross and walking towards it. But would you say that that you're comfortable with the choice that you made to go through this transition and still feel like you can achieve righteousness with your faith and walk closer towards God? Or do you feel like they are contrary paths?
So because I've made certain choices, I think it would be prudent that I put in a whole lot more effort into other aspects of my life.
Right.
So again, it goes back to a point earlier. One should not do a quote unquote bad thing to achieve a good thing. If one must do a quote unquote bad thing, hopefully it's as neutral as possible. But life is complicated. So okay, so what is it that I'm doing to not compensate? I don't know if compensate's a great word. What am I doing to carry my cross in other ways? So I'm still carrying the cross. I'm carrying, you could say that maybe I'm picking and choosing which crosses to carry, and that I've got multiple crosses and I can't carry every single cross. You could say that.
That's interesting.
And well, I don't know if that's Catholic theology that I just sprouted, so don't quote me on that.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah, okay.
Kind of quiet. But yeah, we can hear you.
Kind of quiet.
Yeah.
I
don't know what. So you guys can talk.
Perhaps a better explanation is there are many crosses. There's not just one cross. There are many crosses that each of us have to carry. Some people can carry 10 crosses. Other people can carry 100 crosses. And some people only carry one cross, which I don't know, maybe we should be asking questions about that. Look, the one cross I just can't carry is living as a man. I can't do that. But I can devote to my postgrad in theology. I can, outside of that, go to Mass every Sunday, which I've been doing in more recent times when I switched over to the Anglo-Catholic tradition of the Anglican Communion. And on that note, it kind of makes sense because whilst the Catholic Church is founded on, the Catholic Church is arguably founded by Jesus Christ. The Church of England, the Anglican Communion, was founded by King Henry VIII, and his views on marriage and sexuality were quite distorted. So one could argue because he founded the original sin of the Church of England is that of concupiscence, King Henry VIII's concupiscence. a distortion of marriage and sexuality. So one could say, Dana, you're a better fit as an Anglican. Although that's not a label I use. I prefer Anglo-Catholic. In some ways, especially liturgically, we're more Catholic than the Catholic Church. But I've kind of gone on a tangent. But that's helped me ensure that I'm consistently going to church every Sunday, going to mass every Sunday. That's not something I was doing before.
In essence, are you saying that you're kind of like making up for that one thing that you feel you can't change about yourself in other ways?
Sounds like you're doing a lot of works, but we don't get into heaven with works. That's what it sounds like you're doing.
Works and faith. Both are very important.
You don't need to work, though. Jesus has already paid your debt. It is already forgiven. It is forgiven.
On a non-theological note, if I didn't work, I'd go nuts.
I would think it's the other way around. That you would, like with the Mormons, for example, they can't have tea or coffee. It's so many rules. It's such a difficult attempt at trying to get into heaven. Like, don't you think that that's more demanding? And can you answer me?
No, because what I've been doing, it depends on the type of work. If the work helps me to develop my faith, to maintain my faith, to strengthen my faith,
that's a good point.
So if I'm like, I've got to finish my master's, otherwise I won't go. No, that's not the approach I take. The approach I take is, this is teaching me a lot about my Catholic/Christian faith. This is helping me deepen my faith. Therefore, I should continue. And outside of uni, I've been doing Bible studies outside of uni. It's not like, and it's not like, I've got to, I've got these quotas to meet. I've got to finish the book of Job, for example, by this date. Otherwise, the Lord's going to. No. I don't take that approach. When I work, it needs to make sense. I don't, I'm not. If I took the approach of works in order to go to heaven, well, look, I might as well be a second-hand car salesman, or saleswoman, I should say.
Sure.
I'm not here to sell second-hand cars, so I certainly don't want to start, whether literally or figuratively. So
the thing is, I don't know what you guys spoke about when I was trying to connect back in. The thing that worries me is, obviously you have your reasons for doing what you've done. My fear is, because I love you so much and because you've always been kind to me, my fear is that you're thinking this in this particular laneway, but you're not repentant of what you've done, bearing in mind that I don't know your prayer life. Maybe you ask God to forgive you for your sins every night. I don't know. I can't make that judgment of your particular relationship with Christ. But I feel like for those watching this, they'll be like, oh my God, she's not stating the obvious. Don't you think that in your faith that you should show a sense of, the Bible says you shall know them by their fruits, but because you're in a position right now where you're still happy to stay as you are, you're not showing repentance, so you're not technically, by maybe the viewer's standard or even the biblical standard, showing the fruits. You may, because I know your fruits. I know you treat everyone really well. I know you're kind. I know that when we've been out, you've shouted for my drinks and food before. I know you are a kind person. But in terms of your faith, maybe you're not showing your fruits in the context of being repentant what if you've done something to yourself that is none of our business, if any of that has taken place, you're happy as you are. I'm not really asking a question there, but I'm pretty sure you can decipher what I'm trying to say. Lauren, do you want to add to that? Sorry, go ahead.
So herein, go on.
Respond.
So herein lies the
I want to see you in
contradiction.
heaven.
Well, herein lies the contradiction. There's the mention of repentance, and then there's the mention of happiness. And why is that a contradiction? Well,
no,
if I was to repent, what am I repenting, and do I believe in that repentance? And in order to believe, if I believe to believe in repentance, I must know and understand. But if I don't know and understand, which gender dysphoria does not help with, I mean, look, I could repent. I'll be frank with you. If I was to repent, if I was to walk away from a camera and repent genuinely, so that, you know, I'm not doing it because I'm in front of a camera, like, you know, I'm away from a camera, and that's where we, you know, we can see whether I'm being genuine or not. But put the camera away, and if I force myself to repent, I'll then be like, I'm not feeling anything. Maybe because I don't believe in the repentance, I'm just blurting out words that I don't believe in. So why repent if it's not genuine? And in order for it to be genuine, I need to have that knowledge and understanding and conviction. But gender dysphoria does not help with that.
I understand what you're saying, and I think that's a very fair point. I have another thing to ask. Do you think this gender dysphoria journey you've been on, that it could be tied to something spiritual? Like, do you believe that unclean spirits can attach to you or deceive your mind? Like the Bible says, take every thought captive. Like, not every thought that we think comes from God or from ourselves. They are other external spiritual forces that can plant thoughts in our mind and thoughts that we meditate on lead to feelings, and when we meditate on feelings, it like can completely change our whole position on things. So I'm just wondering if this is something you've perhaps considered is the root cause of this gender dysphoria, as opposed to just say a predisposition since birth, or a mental kind of psychological issue that you might.
So I don't think gender dysphoria is a design of God.
Okay.
It could be argued that gender dysphoria is the work of the devil. So
refreshing to hear
see, it's about the gender dysphoria. It's not about the person, and it's not about trans people. Now, I could pray the trans away, so to speak. I don't think that's never worked. And any other trans people out there who's
pray. What do you mean by that?
If gender dysphoria is the work of the devil, you'd pray the trans away. So I'm making light of the pray the gay away trope. I'm just making fun of that trope. I'm being facetious. That's all it is. So I'm pretty sure that there are trans Christians out there who've done the whole pray the trans away, and what do you know? They transitioned anyway, and I'm sure if they start trying to pray the trans away, nothing's going to happen. It's like, you know, you as a comparison, you hit your head physically on the wall. So you keep hitting your head on the wall as if you're going to knock the wall down, but you're not going to knock the wall down because the wall's not going to be knocked down. So you know, the wall's made of wood.
Doing it strength? Wouldn't you classify that as doing it in your own strength as opposed to the strength of God, who can reach down into our circumstances and completely transform us for his greater good? Unless you don't hold that position. But...
here's another way of looking at it. So we'll look at the life of Paul.
Yes.
He was, I think in the early part of his life, he went around persecuting Jews on behalf of
Christians.
Sorry, not. Well, yes, I can't remember. Was it Jews and Christians, or all Christians, or just Christians? I can't remember.
At the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, that slipped on.
You were ahead, Anna.
Yes, so he was doing all that, and then on the road to Damascus, he had a revelation. Now, and that completely changed his life, as we know. So unless I'm walking figuratively on the road to Damascus, and then I have a Paul moment.
Yes.
Maybe I'll have a Paul moment. Maybe, I'll walk around the streets where I am right now, and I'll have a Paul in Damascus moment. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it'll happen. Maybe it won't. Maybe in 50 years' time, when I'm frail and old and I'm walking figuratively down Damascus, and then I get knocked off my I don't know. I lose my walking stick and I fell down and have my Paul moment, and then realize, oh my God, literally, why did I gender transition all those decades ago? Okay, yeah, fine. Here's a possibility. Maybe a 0.0001, who knows, percent that might happen, but so I'm not going to say it's impossible, because that is not.
All things are possible with Christ.
If we believe in miracles, then impossibility is not a part of our vocabulary.
Absolutely.
But unless I think it's coming, or it actually does happen, until it happens, I can't really say much further, because, Paul didn't think he was going to, have his revelation at Damascus, but it happened. He thought he was just going to continue to persecute Jews and have a jolly of a time out of it.
True. What do you think, Dana, about deliverance? Like, is that something you would be open to? I'm sure when you were exploring the Pentecostal and evangelical kind of sphere, it may have opened that door to you, but is this something that you believe in or don't believe in? Would you be willing to receive deliverance for or healing for what you're going through,
or anything you're going through,
or for any?
I think the way I heal spiritually, the way I've been able to do it, is to do it intellectually. So I made the point earlier, I love God intellectually. I do struggle with loving God emotionally, which is why I was never satisfied with one Pentecostal / charismatic church. It just didn't do it for me. And doing my postgrad in theology at Notre Dame, yes, it's a very Catholic uni, but that's the point. It has helped me connect intellectually in an emotional way. I know that doesn't exactly make sense, but
I get it.
It's worked for me. It's helped me, and it's in a way a healing process. Now, in what sense? Well, there's different angles to this. One angle is, part of the reason why I lapsed as a teenager as a Catholic is, in my infinite wisdom, I approached a religious sister. I hadn't transitioned yet. I talked about, me being trans. This is in the early 2000s, mind you. And she didn't have the most pastoral response. She just did this whole, it's morally wrong and you shouldn't do it. And
Right.
I think she suggested to pray hard, or I just remember it just wasn't exactly a pleasant experience.
You can't pray the trans away, just like you can't pray the gay away. I think that's the problem with Christianity and Christians in general. The focus needs to be on your relationship with Christ. From that foundation, then the possibility stands that Christ will work through you, and your desire or your carnal lusts, or whatever, however you want to word it, can then evaporate. Because I don't know if you remember the band Korn. I never listened to Korn, but that guy Brian Welch was a coke sniffer, loved his drugs. He prayed to God. He wanted to be saved, and God saved him, and he never did cocaine again. And so I don't have a story like that. I have always been a Christian. I lapsed like you did. Like, you were always a Catholic. I was always a Christian. I lapsed. Then I came back to it. And I didn't really lapse that badly. I just lapsed in the sense that I stopped going to church, and I stopped putting him first. But it wasn't like, I started sex and drugs and rock and roll. It wasn't like that. And so I think for you, obviously you're happy as you are, which is fine, and I want you to feel happy. But more than that, I would hope that your goal would be to be saved. And that's I think the concern of any and every Christian out there, is that we want the people that we love here with us. Yeah. So I didn't really ask you.
That's for great hope, and the hope is, in the end times, maybe not all will be saved. Who knows? Ideally, all will be saved.
Ideally, all.
Yeah. Realistically, the hope is most will be saved. We just don't know when the end times is. And in the lead up to that, we find, okay, because of our imperfections, because we're fallen, can someone carry every single cross of theirs? Well,
we don't have to carry the cross. Jesus did.
Well, realistically, I mean, for me to, detransition, to carry the cross of being a man or whatever, I'm not doing that. Now, that is a lot of work.
That's pride. I understand it perfectly well, because I have pride too, just in different aspects.
Why is that? Like, what would happen hypothetically if you were to choose that path and go, Lord, I'm fully denying myself here. I could go and be a woman, but I'm denying myself and going back to the way that you made me. I mean, how would that affect you? How would it affect your state of mind? How would that affect your relationship with God, with people?
I couldn't function.
Really?
At one point in my life as a woman, I did attempt detransition. It was a very ugly part of my life, and I never want to see a repeat of it. I did attempt to detransition. It didn't last very long, and I never want to go through it ever again.
Right.
Ever.
So what prompted that decision? Because there was something that made you...
A combination of lack of judgment and hanging out with the wrong people.
Okay.
They pressure you.
Yes?
It's not something I'm not sure if I've ever told this story so publicly. I don't think I have, but it's not something I usually think about. Even occasionally, it's something I try not to think about. In fact, I don't usually think about it because it was just an unpleasant experience.
Right.
So yes, I have tried to transition once, and no, I will never do that again, and I'll ensure that it never happens again.
So it was more prompted by the demands and the pressure of other people rather than your own personal conviction.
Yeah, something like that.
Right.
Without too much detail, it's something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yes, go on.
Do you worry as someone who aligns with the right-leaning world? So you are a rare trans person.
Hmm.
Do you worry about the next generation? Like, if like a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old sees someone with long hair, pretty eyelashes, lipstick on, female appearing body, but a masculine voice, do you not worry about the template that God has created messing with their understanding a little bit? Does that bother you as someone who likes kids? And does that, do you see I know you see the conservative point of view with that, but does it bother you that even though you're here, you exist, Caitlyn Jenner here exists, do you think that on some level you confuse the younger generation? And does that worry you?
I think it's important not to shelter children. I also think it's inappropriate to expose children to drag story time or whatever it's called, because it's like we don't ask a stripper, or we don't ask a lady dressed very scantily, I think that's the term, to walk up to, I don't know, a children's classroom and start reading stories. Like, we don't do that. No. Besides the fact that it objectifies women, we don't do that. So why do we have drag story time? I'm like,
at school.
Yeah. So we shouldn't shelter children, but obviously we don't expose them to certain things because it's just not necessary.
Yeah, of course. What if you're sitting in the train? What if you're sitting in the train and you're on the phone and they see a female, but then they hear your voice, or Caitlyn Jenner, or whoever else? Do you think that does that minimal level of exposure worry you for a child, or not particularly?
No, because it's they need to understand that yes, there are a diverse range of people. There's a diverse range of people in this world, including imperfect people. In fact, everyone's imperfect. They just don't need to see the excesses, but they do need to understand that people have all sorts of imperfections. They do need to understand that.
Yeah.
Now, whilst we're on the topic, when I was returning back to the Catholic faith, and before I switched to the Anglo-Catholic tradition, I was a volunteer special SRE teacher at a local public school near where I worked at the time. Okay. And on a Friday morning, I would go into the school for just under an hour, teaching, catechizing, teaching, providing Catholic religious education to years 2 to 4. Now, no one in that classroom ever asked me or asked a peer the question of, why do you have a deep voice? Or whispering to the person next to them, why does she have a big voice? I mean, not big voice, deep voice. Yeah. Or why does she have a deep voice? I never picked up on that, and no one's asked me, which tells me that maybe some of the kids thought it was strange that I had a deep voice, but maybe they're a little more distracted by either what I was teaching, or if they found what I was teaching boring, because kids being kids, some of them just tuned out. You can't help that. Maybe they were too busy thinking about the video game they're playing on their PlayStation 4, are we up to PlayStation 5 or whatever, the level they got up to the night before, and how excited they are for how they're going to go to the next level when they get home that night. Maybe they're thinking about that.
Maybe they're mentally curious for a second and then they forgot, and then and it didn't affect them in any way. Like that's why I was asking.
No.
You
You never know, but there's nothing inappropriate about them seeing me unless I'm in drag. Then, yeah, no, that's inappropriate. That's maybe when they've turned 18, and they're consenting to entering into a nightclub that's holding a drag show. Fine, whatever. But that's an 18-year-old plus problem, not a... Yeah, so I thought I'd just make it clear there are trans people and there are drag trolls.
Oh, absolutely.
It's really, if you're a drag queen rocking up to drag story time, you're trolling the kids inappropriately, and you're trolling everyone else. You're trolling the parents, you're just trolling everyone. Like, anyway, well, for the reasons we've already discussed. So
Yeah. Very interesting.
yeah.
Right.
So we've gone for over an hour. So I reckon, Dana, you're probably catching a cold because you're outside and coughing. And
Oh no, I've had this cough since December.
oh, bummer, that's not good.
Now
Chronic cough?
I don't think I had COVID in December. I just started coughing, and I haven't stopped coughing since. And I've had to tell people,
Goodness.
oh, look, I know I keep coughing, but I've had it since December, and supposedly, trust the science. I should, if it's been going on since December, it's long COVID, trust the science. So don't freak out. Yeah, look, I don't know why I keep coughing.
People having that problem.
I did ask a doctor for medication, like, help me here. So he gave me medication. I think it was antibiotics, like he gave me, or whatever he gave me.
Your
Yeah,
cough.
that didn't help. It didn't help. So I was like,
It's like
yeah,
that's
whatever.
all
Okay.
to prescription antibiotics, everything.
Yeah, so I yeah, maybe it's long COVID, and I had COVID. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? Trust the science. Who knows?
Bill Gates just came out saying that he's made a warning to Australia that that the next pandemic could be man-made, as if this wasn't.
The first one wasn't.
I liked it. I liked it when Bill Gates had just invented Windows 95. I really liked it. When he had just invented Windows 95. That was a great operating system.
Yeah, but he was replaced. The real Bill Gates is probably dead, and whoever we have.
He was here in Melbourne. Didn't you know he was at the Australian Open?
I did know that, yeah, but I don't care for him in any way, shape, or form.
Or you reckon he's a clone?
I mean, I don't actually think that, but I feel like it would make sense that the one that we have now is such a globalist, such a patsy. Yeah.
Well, I know he part of the article was saying he actually met with Albanese to discuss climate change and health and education and all these things.
Yes, he's not a climate scientist.
Yeah.
Now, why didn't those two go to Alice Springs instead?
Question.
With all that money,
You did.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dana Pham,
that's day.
for coming on this podcast, very last minute.
Thank you very much, Dana. Really enjoyed with you.
Yes, it's always a fascinating conversation when Dana is in the room. So thank you, or in the
Being so open as well.
I hope I didn't waffle on too much.
No, not at all. I think it was you answered every question so openly and with great vulnerability. So I thank you for that.
That's okay.
Good dude. Okay, so I suppose we'll wait around for the next episode 4. I don't know who that is yet, but it'll be heaps of fun. Thank you, Dana, for discussing faith rather than politics this time around. It was certainly interesting. Sorry about my connection. I didn't assume it would be me who would have the weird connection. So
I hope I didn't drag my explanations too long for some of the questions.
No, it's okay. You have to be you. That's how you roll. That's how you roll. So I'm just going to end the recording now. Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.